Welcome to Not So PG. I'm Brooke Blett. My pronouns are she and her.
I'm Matty Mills. My pronouns are he and him. And before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record. And for me, that's the Gadigal People of the Eora Nation.
And for me, that's the Surrendering People of the Kulin Nation. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
How was your weekend?
Oh my gosh, it feels like Sydney has come alive. I know that you're not in Sydney, but let me explain. This city is like, the atmosphere in this city is crazy. Like, it is the gayest city in the world right now. Like,
Oh
no
my
doubt.
God. I have like the biggest FOMO. Like, I'm seeing all these stories and people out and about and like events. Like, I've just been watching your stories and being like, why am I not there?
Oh, well,
Why?
I know. I wish you were here, but, you know, we're going to have some gay moments, I'm sure, across, you know, Sydney World Pride. But this week has been massive for me. It started off by hosting the International Press Conference for Sydney World Pride, which was on at 7 a.m. in the morning, super early, and I had a night out before, the night before. So I was curfewed. So I gave myself a curfew and I went home at a good hour, but I was still a bit dusty. And I was like, why did they have to do this at 7 a.m.? Like, come on. Anyway, it was for the press, you know, obviously get it done early in the morning, then they can send all the photos out. And then I saw the Rocky Horror Show at the end of the week, which was amazing. Have you seen the film?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this because I saw your story and
Yeah.
also saw some other few stories that we'll ask about later.
Yeah, girl.
But I've actually never watched the full movie.
Neither have I. Oh my God. See, we are the same person.
Yeah. Is that the one where it's like...
Do the time warp again. Yes.
Okay. So I have a bit of a story about that. So I've never
Yep.
seen the movie, but in primary school years ago,
Yeah.
you know how like they in towns, like in city, like in Perth, they do like a Christmas parade and like people do
all the
like
schools and kids do stuff?
Yes. And
Cute.
so I was in it doing that dance.
The time warp. Rocky Horror.
but
For kids. Really?
I have this like vague memory of like doing this like dance, but I didn't know what it was from. I had
That's
no
hilarious. And
idea.
I'm glad that you didn't know at that age because the musical is fucking bonkers. Like, if you haven't seen the film, which is like my experience, I walked in not knowing like what was going to happen and it is total chaos from start to finish. But I get there and like, you know, do the red carpet, have photos, see a lot of people that I know. And then I run into my friend Nathan Wright, who ends up being the choreographer for the show. And he was the choreographer on Elvis, the film. So I was like, I had this like amazing moment where I was able to catch up with a friend and also just congratulate him on his work. But if you haven't seen this show, you need to go and see it. It is like, it's so fun. It's so like, it's just one of those musicals where you leave and you're like a happier person. It does something to the DNA that's in your blood. It's like, oh my God, that was so amazing. But yeah, and then I obviously had like, you know, massive events between sort of the start of that week and Rocky Horror Show. And one of them was this amazing Calvin, I was going to say Calvin Harris event. No, that didn't happen. Calvin Klein event.
Oh yeah, I did see that. I saw a lot of my friends. Milo,
Yes.
James was there.
Milo
like-
and I did have a dance off at one point.
She would have beat your ass.
Well, babe, did you see? No, I hope you didn't. No, you didn't see
No,
this.
so let's talk about that. So
No.
I know Milo, and I know she is a phenomenal dancer, performer,
Yes.
entertainer, everything. Like she
Yeah.
was at Galentine's.
Yes.
She actually looked after me at Galentine's. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
She was mum that night.
Great.
I'm kind of embarrassed.
Mama
But
Milo.
this is not about me. This is about the story that you put up that was up for a certain amount of hours.
Yes, sometimes I wake up and I think to myself, what possessed you to post that photo or that video at that point in the night? It's obviously like a midnight upload, you know? It's like, oh, I'm having so much fun, midnight upload. And it was me dancing at this event, but I was going hard out. And like, sometimes I'm so embarrassed for myself. Like, I get like secondhand embarrassment for myself. And I'm like, why do I do this? Like, why do I think that like me dancing that hard is a vibe? Like, I don't know.
You're feeling yourself. You know what? Who cares? There was no judgment from my end. I was just like, get it.
Well, I care because the thing is, it's like if people see that, they know the real version of me. That's for my friends, not my
Yeah.
audience online.
It is. They want to see you being candid and like free. And I think, where content is like moving into now, it's like being as real as you can, being authentic and being genuine. And I've always stood by that. I think, like life is a bit ugly sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you want to know something?
Okay.
You know how you're talking about being real and being, spontaneous and doing stuff that like, sort of engages your audience and makes it feel like they're in your like bathroom or living room or bedroom.
Yeah.
You do this really well where you sort of like are doing something, you're like doing an action or you're like putting makeup on or you're like in your bathroom washing your face and talking to your camera. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and do that. Babe, did it fucking work? I was like, nah, I hate this. I literally was putting on like face cream and I was like, oh yeah, like talking to the camera. And then I watched it back and I was like, this ain't it. I can't do it. I'm not an influencer. This ain't it. I'm not an influencer. This doesn't work for me. I look like an absolute idiot. And I even like set up the camera and like tried to make it real candid. And I just don't know how to do it. Tell me, give me the tips and tricks, babe.
I think I just pretend because I'm by myself. It's so weird working in content because most of the content you put out, you're by yourself. And it feels like you're talking. And I feel like I just pretend that I'm just talking to one of my friends and I'm about to send them this video.
Okay.
Like I'm just sending my friends the video. Like I'm just sending you this video and I'm telling you about something that you pointless information that you probably don't give a fuck about, but I'm just going to share it with you anyway.
It makes them feel like they're in your bathroom or, wherever you are, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're so good in front of the camera. Like I just feel like you're a natural.
I think because I just spent time doing it and I think I've always been really interested in like sharing what, that's why we like, we want to share what we know and I always want to learn and I also want to like guide people and I think that's just my love language. I think that's just me like as a person. I just like if I learn something and I think that it's worth sharing, like I will. But I have pulled back heaps this year because as you know, I'm working more in that creative passions. Like, I am comfortable on the camera. So I'm like, fuck it, let's go for acting and see if I can make it there.
Yeah.
And you've really encouraged me and inspired me to do that because you already sort of worked, you're already working in it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
What you share and what you don't share is always like a bit of a conflict sometimes. But I think, being genuine and authentic is really important for your audience. And I feel like we fucking you're candid as fuck on here. So just be as candid as fuck.
I am on here. This is the audio. This is the platform for me to be candid. But speaking of being like goals in front of the camera, there has been a number of photos that have come out of the last week of you doing these incredible photo shoots. What about the one you did? I'm pretty sure it was for the Iconic. Now, that was iconic. Like, tell me about that shoot. You obviously were able to, like, do it with other queer iconic people. You looked beautiful.
Oh, honestly, that shoot was fucking phenomenal. So it was obviously for Sydney World Pride, and it's about being loud. So Louder Now is the campaign for the Iconic, and I worked with a couple of other queer talent and I was so honored. We did this amazing shot where we all wore different colored Calvin Klein undies and we were all topless.
I saw that.
And I've never felt so free in my life.
Oh, really?
100%. Everyone had their boobs out. Like, no one give a fuck. Like, this goes to show how far I've come within myself. Like, I wasn't very body confident when I was younger. I was like, I would never get my boobs or my butt out. Like, I didn't really care. But at the same time, I was like, wow, like, yeah, this is where I'm at. And it was such a free space. Like, there was no judgment. Everyone knew what kind of shot we wanted and it wanted, how powerful it would be. And so everyone just kind of like, all molded into like one. And it was actually so hot.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. Like, it was 5 of us and it was great. And I had never really branched out into that Y2K vibe.
Yeah,
I think we were talking about how I just don't really vibe it. Like Y2K for me is like I just never grew up in that era. Like,
yes.
I was kind of coming out of it. Like like I was only young when that was in, I think.
Yes,
And so I never really got to be a part of that era.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great. Like it feels just very costume for me. Like it just feels very not me, which is fine. But I actually loved it because it felt like I actually felt like cool. Not saying that I'm not cool, but like
no,
you're
I know what you mean.
Yeah, you're like, oh, am I like, am I like a clean girl aesthetic? Like,
Well, speaking of like, the pressure of looking cool or outfits, like that has been one of the things on my mind, like for Sydney World Pride. It's like I have so many things that I'm attending or working at or like just going to as a guest or, you know, get to have like, a hot photo at. And I'm like, what do I wear? I'm like, do I have like a theme across the festival or do I like switch it up and be like, yes, he's versatile. He can pull off this. He can pull off that. I've been trying. I ended up going to this Calvin Klein event and I got this photo taken sort of at their media wall. And I remember looking back on it and I was like, in my head, I looked like fashionable. But then when I saw the photo, I felt like a businesswoman and it wasn't the vibe. I felt like I was like almost like a news presenter, but like a really formal businesswoman. And in my head, I looked cool when I left the house. But then when I saw the photo, I was like, it wasn't it, Matty. That was definitely a fail and we won't be doing that again. I
mean, you always look bloody phenomenal. Like I know, fashion is hard and it's always changing, right? Yep. It's always changing.
Yes.
But the thing is, everyone's style doesn't always like fit you as your like personality. Like I've learned in my bloody 28 years that dress what you feel comfortable in and also dress for the job that you want.
Yes.
And dress.
It's better to be overdressed than underdressed.
Yes.
Yes.
That was exactly what I was going to say.
I knew you were going to say that. Sometimes do you walk out of the house and think to yourself, like, this is what's happening lately? Like, sometimes I have, like, moments where I want to be, like, tight, everything tight and, like, feel like my body's on display. And then there's other times, look at you smiling, there's other moments where it's like, I just want everything loose. Like, I don't want anyone to see the shape of my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's normal. Like, I feel like you feel confident at different times. It's the spectrum of confidence. Like, sometimes you want to dress in baggy clothes. I'm like, I'm baggy today because I'm like, well, I'm just chilling out, like vibing. I don't want to like wear tight things that make me feel a little bit uncomfortable sitting down. Like, I get it. There's fashion do's and don'ts, and there's things that I will do, and there are things that I will not.
Well, speaking of fashion, I'm coming to Melbourne for Melbourne Fashion Festival and I'm walking in a show. I'm closing Melbourne Fashion Week. I know. How fun. I mean, I haven't modelled since I was literally 20 years old and I'm more of like a Beyonce at the Super Bowl type of walk instead of like an actual model's walk, which is like quite like reserved and, quite measured. I'm telling you, I have to get some, I need to get some tips and tricks off Nathan Maguire because, I'm going to end up walking like it's a run, like it's like my Super Bowl halftime show instead of a runway walk. But,
For those who don't know who Nathan Maguire is, he's one of the leading First Nations models. He won GQ Man of the Year this year.
He's iconic.
Yeah, he is. And he's phenomenal. Oh my God. So,
and he's so hot. Like,
you've never, I know, he's my cousin, so don't be going there.
Girl, he's taken, but let me tell you, he is smoking hot. Fair Day was on the weekend, on Sunday. It's the biggest, I'm talking like one of the biggest festival events for Mardi Gras every year. But this year it was extra special because obviously Sydney World Pride. I'm guessing there was around 30,000 people at this festival. Like, it was so hard to get through. I was there with a cameraman who was like holding a trolley and a camera on his shoulder. And I felt so sorry for him because we started work at like, I don't know, maybe like 9 a.m. and we didn't finish until the afternoon. But by the end of the day, we were drenched in sweat and our whole bodies were like moisture.
I literally heard that it was so hot.
Yes, it was. And like there was there wasn't much like, I mean, it was great, but like I couldn't like stop and, you know, have a drink or, you know, like there was no time for like me to even hydrate myself. So I was just like working. But I had such a good time. Have you been to Fair Day before?
No, do you know what? I contemplated whether I was going to book a flight to fly into Sydney to come to Fair Day because I didn't want to miss out. But
Yeah.
I just didn't want to plan anything because I've got
Yeah.
the busiest couple of weeks coming up.
Yep.
And I kind of like now regret like not coming.
Well, I think like the smart thing is to like pick and choose your battles with Sydney World Pride. It's like, what do you want to go to the most and what are you happy just to like leave behind? Because even yesterday at the end of the day, instead of like hanging out after work and like seeing friends and catching up, I went straight home. Like I was home by like 4:30 in the afternoon and I didn't want to, this sounds rude, but I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to be in that vibe because I'd like been working all day. So, but it was great. The good thing about Fair Day is that it's really family friendly.
Yeah.
So there's like multiple different stages. There's even like a dog show where these cute dogs get like dressed up in like tutus and costumes and they do like tricks.
That's my kind of show. That's my kind of show.
But one of the highlights definitely was hosting the First Nations Queer Voices panel, and that was at the First Nations Circle, which is directly in the centre of Fair Day. It was something that was introduced last year. And they're going to have it every year. It's basically a massive circle of First Nations organisations and businesses that champion queer voices.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of hosting that panel with Matika Little from Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, Shane Sturgis from Black Corporation, and Jane Yedeka from Black Joy, which is another Black podcast. And we had this like really open conversation about the importance of like the intersection of First Nations and queer voices in our community, but also abroad. And and you know the challenges around that,
Yeah.
and it was just great to hear like the different points of view because obviously like Black is an organisation in Sydney that is based in Sydney that does a lot of work around sexual health,
Yeah.
but also it's a membership organisation where queer First Nations people can feel like they're a part of a community and also feel supported. As they, go through their journey of maybe coming out or accessing services that they need, help with. And then, obviously Black Joy is a really good podcast where it's all about like Black love and Black joy. So there was like, it was a great panel. I wish you were there. I wish you were on the panel as well.
That sort of stuff is always something that I feel so passionate towards and, being a part of. And, we talk about Black joy and Black excellence all the time. And then when you're in a room full of Black excellence, it's like, you can't help but feel the love and the joy in the room.
Yes.
I mean, also I think about the young people who benefit so much from our conversations, but also the conversations and the people that offer that support and being, there and, who knows, some people might have rocked up there and not been out and that might have helped them. And I always think about that and how difficult it was for me to find that support growing up. Like I came into my sexuality, I think, just out of high school. I always knew that, I always had this attraction and like, I'd have crushes on my girl teachers like when I was young, but I just thought it was just like, I know it's weird to think back at that age and be like, well, there was something there, but I couldn't grasp it or I couldn't figure it out and I didn't know, I thought I was like not normal for feeling that. So then I just suppressed it. And then I guess like playing footy, I had an awesome group of girls who, were all pretty much gay, lesbian, queer, that I felt that I could just be myself and I guess not put labels into it and so labels onto it. And so, when I think about these experiences, so like, having that type of panel or having those types of environments, I would be like, I wish I had that. And I'm so like, makes me feel a lot of joy, obviously, but I think makes me feel so happy that there are those available now. Yeah. Because did you come out? You came out pretty late.
Yeah, and you know what's so funny? When I this week it sort of gave me there was a moment in this week where I was at Channel 9 and I'd met all these colleagues that I had worked with when I was 18, at the end of 18 and 19 years old, right? And they said to me, when you worked here, you weren't out. And in my head, I had this moment of going, oh my gosh, I actually wasn't out to my work. I was out to everyone else in my life, but I wasn't out to my colleagues. And these are the people who I used to work with at Channel 9 when I was 19 years old. And so in my head, I sort of just assumed, like, I didn't remember that. And I assumed that, like, when I worked there and had, you know, these relationships, that they all just knew that I was, you know, gay. But they told me that they didn't know. And sometimes, like, you don't, like, I don't know, sometimes you just assume things and, you know, that people know. And some people, you know, obviously didn't know. But it was a great moment to be able to go back and be like, yeah, I'm so gay. I'm now hosting the Channel 9 Pride event. Like, it was fun. But one of the points of the conversation on the panel that I was really passionate about, and you sort of brought it up earlier, is the fact that, you know, there are organisations and there are programs that are city-centric that need to be made, you know, accessible for people in regional and remote communities. Because there are so many things that there are positive things about moving to the city and being able to create your, you know, chosen family and being able to be around queer people and being queer spaces and safe spaces. But I don't think we focus enough on the fact that there are people in regional and remote communities who don't have access to these spaces or these, like, you know, communities. And they're the people who need our help the most, because feeling alone and feeling, you know, like you don't have that support is definitely something that affects your mental health and something that contributes to the suicide rates that is so high in our community. So one of my questions was, how is Black and how is the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, or how is, you know, Black Joy, the podcast, being able to access the audiences that aren't from the city? Because if I was, you know, running an organisation, I would definitely turn the dial and turn the focus to regional and remote, you know, communities, especially, you know, the brother boys and sister girls who sometimes, you know, have to sort of come up against major challenges within their own communities. And like you know, you have these moments where you're able to connect with them at Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, like I have done over the last few years, and you hear stories and you're like, I just wish that there was more support or more, you know, focus or more funding, government funding, that would allow to create hubs or safe spaces in these communities, like, you know, not just programs, but like actual spaces. So community centres or, you know, sexual health clinics. I'm like, it's one thing to be able to, like, you know, champion voices that are city-centric, but those voices are very loud. And we need to, like, turn the dial to the regional and remote communities who need the support the most.
Well, I agree. We both come from pretty regional towns and we now both live in major cities. I can say confidently that I never really had that exposure in my regional, like, town. Like, I had no... there was no talk of it. There was no speaking of being gay or being queer. There was no celebration of it.
Yep.
And I don't even think till even this day they're very my town wouldn't be that progressive. I think, you know, they have the basic community centres, but I don't think it's like very... Yeah, and I think for me, like, that really affected my identity growing up. So how many more people are still being affected by this, and how do we make it more accessible is the actual question that we should be asking. Like, how do we get it? And it comes down to funding and it comes down to the government, but also it comes down with exposure and seeing what you...
Representation.
Again, it's so important, and we know that, and we truly know that. Like, you can't be it if you can't see it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we do the podcast, but how many people in regional towns would listen to a podcast? Like, have access to that, have a phone that could dial into podcasts or put on the radio and have a little and listen to, you know, our little short ads and be like, oh, I'm curious to know what that podcast is about, and do the research. They just don't have that access. And I think, you know, I think community funding and personally working in the government and personally being a youth worker in a government organization, when there is a government change and when there is the structural change, programs that are on the ground get completely and utterly wiped and taken away.
Yeah.
And that for me was the most frustrating thing, is that there were actually so many programs and community center, things happening where I was working.
Yeah.
But as soon as that structural change, that political structure changes, things just get completely like taken and funding gets stripped. And so then you're taking away that opportunity for those people who are involved in those community programs and actually rely on it and actually need that, whether
it's
that's
completely changing livelihoods.
And I think, government don't understand what's happening always on the ground. I get that.
Yeah.
But these programs do make a difference. And I know for a fact that there needs to be more.
Yeah.
Because we, like you said, the LGBT community is one of the leading numbers in suicide rates. And that is a cause. And that's because when the people don't feel accepted, people don't feel seen, people don't feel heard, and they don't feel like, they're suffering in silence.
Yeah. And the lack of consistency, as you say, like with the government, it's like there needs to be some sort of allowance for things to continue even when there is a shift of power or a shift of government. There needs to be, it feels like there shouldn't be annual program funding. There should be caps, like, 10-year blocks of funding that can be, given to programs that you can see has positive impact on our communities. But I know, like, growing up, there was always a fear of coming out, but sometimes I like in my community especially, like, but I also feel like I always had like an idea that I was going to move to the city. So I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. But I don't think that's always the answer. I don't think that's always the answer for people, especially our mob. A lot of people don't want to move to the city. A lot of people don't want to leave country. A lot of people want to stay with their family, stay with their mob, and stay home, like in their own community. And I agree with that as well. I'm like, you don't have to move to the city. You shouldn't have to move to the city to be able to be yourself or come out or access services. You should be able to do that wherever you live.
Truly. I agree. I completely agree. And I think living remote and regional shouldn't be so difficult.
There's different challenges for different locations, There's challenges in the city, there's challenges in the country. But we have these major corporate sponsors that sort of put their hands up sometimes around, certain events like Sydney World Pride or Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. And they have these activations, or they have this pool of money that they put into charities or organisations to show their allyship, right?
Yes.
But is this allyship situational and timely to just sort of sit within one moment of the year, which is in March, Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, or are they actually doing the work all year round and contributing to the community in a meaningful way? I think, like, I've heard conversations, I'll just say this, I've heard conversations from both the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras and Sydney World Pride, that what they do when they bring on partners, big corporate partners, there actually is a charter that they need to follow throughout the year. So I do know that they're quite discerning when it comes to the bigger corporate sponsors, but then I'm not sure if that filters down to sort of the smaller, still big corporations that aren't known as the immediate partners of these festivals. So, like, have you witnessed tokenism in the corporate sector, or because you partner with a lot of brands, you partner with, especially through your content work. I'm sure that you partner with great brands who show support all year round. But have you seen tokenism when it comes to supporting our community?
Honestly, one of the very first things I do when someone comes and asks, whether they want to work together is, what is the reason to why you want to work with me? And also, like, what is the concept? What is the idea? And it's, I guess I'm probably, you and I have in a very, like, niche sort of, we're both queer, we're both First Nations, and there's not been that many First Nations creators and curators of content and up until more recent, and we're seeing the growth in that, and I'm loving that also. But I also don't, and this is why I worry about mob who go into working in content and working in creative industry, is that being selected just purely based on the fact that it's a box tick. And that's what I get really frustrated in. So I feel like, you know, I want to know whether the organization has done their research, has done, you know, the background information on the idea that they've come to me for. And sometimes I say no because it just seems so fucking tokenistic that you can just see it, you can smell it, and you can and it's kind of really gross behavior in so many ways, because it's like, you really don't care about this. Like I worked with a brand last year, and I won't name it obviously because I just don't feel like that's appropriate, but I went to them. They asked to work with me, and I went to them. I'm like, okay, so you want to work together. You want to work together for the whole year. What are you going to give back, and what are you doing for community? And that is my question. What are you doing for community? What are you doing for First Nations community? And what are you doing for the queer community? And I have a rite of passage to ask that, because I represent both of those communities. And I'm seeing faces, like we spoke about this before about queer baiting, and I'm seeing people in those spaces that I don't truly believe that not that they don't fit, because who am I to say that? But I don't
the hidden agenda?
Exactly. And I think, you know, they're taking up space where they don't belong. And I think, you know, that's one issue that I have. And I feel like, okay, that I got to ask the same question to myself. But I do belong, because I do represent both of those communities, but I still feel like I don't want to take up space where I feel like someone else is deserving. Also, I don't want to feel like it's very tokenistic. So I will say no to a job. I will happily say no to a job if I feel like it's too much. But then again, when we had that conversation with Isaiah, do you remember the Jan 26 conversation? And he said, the reason why I'm doing the Jan 26 / Australia Day concert was because I'm taking up space where I belong, and I'm saying, and I'm standing here and I'm saying, this is my stance. You can't push us out. We're still here. And I really like that way, and I really like that idea and that thinking around it, because it's like,
because otherwise it comes erasure. You don't get to actually be involved in a conversation.
And you're getting pushed out, and you don't want to be pushed out. But it's like, you know, how many times do we have to constantly prove that we are here and that we take up space? Like, you know, and I think I never used to think, I used to have this thing, right? And I don't know if you're the same. And I used to be like, oh, I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm fucking grateful. But I also am deserving. I'm truly deserving. And I think everyone else is in this world. Everyone is so deserving of the spaces and
that they belong in.
Exactly, and the acceptance. And I do believe that. I know I said, you know, queer baiting is a very complex thing, and I think, you know, I have my opinion on it. That's just my opinion. But I'm like, I don't want to be just ticking a box for you. Absolutely not.
I had someone say to me this week, Brooke, you're I'm sure you've had this said to you. Oh, well, you know, they said, oh, well, aren't you doing everything? And I was like, yeah, I'm really busy. And then they said to me, oh, well, you do, you know, tick the boxes. You are Aboriginal and gay. And and this was a black fella.
Yes. Yeah.
And look, I love this person actually. Like, to be honest, I really like this person. But that comment took me back, and I was like, oh, okay, so do you not think that, like, in my head I was like, oh, well, you don't think I deserve this work? You don't think I deserve this space? And it's only because I represent these two communities. No, it's actually because I'm fucking good at my job. Like, I work hard and I represent extremely well, and I do my job extremely well, and that's why I get hired, because of my reputation, not because I'm gay and Aboriginal. You know, it's like, and I pride myself in my work ethic and my ability to be able to do my job really well. But in saying that, I think that corporate sponsors are extremely important in elevating and amplifying these moments.
Yes.
But if they're not going to do it all year round, I think that they're not welcome to the party. Close the door, you're not allowed in.
Don't be a performative ally. Don't just say, hey, we're going to support this and not do the work throughout the year. It's 24/7. So I was telling you about how at Galentine's, on Valentine's Day, that Milo had to look after me.
Yes. Love Milo. I've seen her so often this week, but yeah.
I know. She's a queer icon.
Iconic.
She is, and I love her. But she had to be mum, and I'm like one that can control myself, you know. I'm just like, you know, I get to a stage and I stop. But Galentine's was just so fun, and when you have champagne, I think it's like the bubbles. Bubbles just don't mix well with me.
Okay.
And so I had a nightclub kiss.
Ooh.
With a non-binary person.
Ooh, I love this. Okay. Miss Pansexual.
So I've gone to this like little nightclub twice, and the first time I had a nightclub kiss in it, and it was with this guy who then came to Valentine's, right? And he's there.
Shut up.
The drama. The drama.
Babe.
And I was just laughing because I was like, wow, I haven't had a nightclub kiss in like literally since I was probably 19.
Okay.
And it was a bit of fun, right?
Wait,
I feel
you're
like
kidding. Can I just wait, stop. You haven't had a nightclub kiss since you were 19?
Other than that time when I kissed Jack, remember? At, at Universal.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Jack Vidgen.
Jack Vidgen and I hooked up.
Hooked up, yeah. And then, do you remember when we were like so close to kissing and then we didn't?
Yeah, Matty leaned in. He's like,
I leaned in and I was like, hey, what are you doing?
And I was like, wait.
No, but oh my God, I'm notorious for a nightclub kiss. I love a dance floor kiss. Kiss and walk away, babe.
Yeah, so I haven't had a nightclub kiss, honestly, since, you know, Jack Vidgen and I had a little nightclub kiss. And then my friends always tried to kiss me when I'm out. But this one time, I'm so grateful for my friends because Milo.
I can already see the article. Jack Vidgen and Brooke Blurton hook up. Love it. Anyway.
He's my friend. He's my, he's beautiful. And
yes, love Jack.
Anyway, so I was thinking Milo was being mum, and I love her for that. And she was like, Brooke, we're getting in the Uber. And I was so stroppy with her because I was like, no, I need to be with the love of my life, which was this non-binary person who I will not name.
Who I have met
and is iconic.
Know of, and is iconic. And,
I'm leaving it out for, people can just assume. And so it was kind of funny because that same guy that I hooked up with at the same nightclub like months before was there and like watching me hook up with someone else. Yeah, but then I had a different Valentine's. You know what? I actually just realized we always talk about my love life, but it's actually kind of funny because it's just...
Girl, that's the iconic part. It's your love life.
It's always changing. Chae was like, it's always changing. Every week is something different. You know what? I love that for me.
I was in Melbourne on Tuesday, wasn't it? And like I had to quickly go down for work. I was doing some interviews and we had lunch and I got to meet your Valentine.
You met my Valentine.
Yes.
Exactly, yes.
And you were going to the hotel and you were going to have like a beautiful moment that evening. What the fuck happened?
They were still my Valentine and we had a great Valentine's Day.
Yes.
But so this is a hard thing, right, for me when I'm dating. I don't know if it's like The Bachelorette has like this, like,
curse.
Yeah, maybe.
Curse?
The curse, the Bachelorette curse.
Yeah.
But people fall in love with me quicker than being on The Bachelorette, I swear.
Quicker than you can make a packet of meagering.
Truly. And so I've been seeing this guy and you met him and you thought he was really lovely and he is really fucking lovely.
You didn't reply to my message about him. I thought she didn't like the adjectives I used.
So I asked Matty how, what thoughts. That's
can I read the message?
Yeah.
So you just wrote thoughts and then I wrote back, he seems so sweet, gentle, kind, chill and safe. Also charming.
Yeah. And they all describe him as a person and he's so lovely and he's really extremely shy. So very different to what I'm used to. So he dropped the Elle bomb.
Girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I like him for that because I'm like, that's courage. That's confident. I like that. But it was just about before he was going away, and I was thinking, fuck, have I just been love bombed? Now I feel like in this awkward zone of like,
Yes.
are we pursuing a relationship? Like when you love someone, like, and then like, how do you define love?
Well, I think that it takes a lot of getting to know someone before you can actually love them. Like, I don't think that you can meet someone and within 3 weeks actually be able to truly, from deep within your heart and soul, say that you love them. Because the reality is that you do not know them. Like you don't. You don't know them enough. And I think what is common with your dating life and experiences, and pull me up if I'm stepping out of line here, sis, but what I see is that there's deep dives from both sides. And what I see is that you get to know people very quickly. And so instead of it being like a situation where it's like slow burn, you're like, you fast track it all. And when I say
speed dating, baby.
The
speed
situation,
dating.
You're like, I don't have time to fuck around. Like, I got to get to know you quickly. Like there's this, like, it feels very deep, quick and fast. And maybe they feel like because you give them immediate access in terms of like to your space, to your heart, to like your true feelings, that they feel like they love you, but they don't really know you. They know you as a 3-week version of yourself. You know?
Well, that's what I think. And then people go, "Oh, it's a feeling," and I'm like,
love is an action. It's not a feeling. It's actually an action.
And that's what I get so confused about because I just get. So I read this book recently, Jay Shetty, 8 Rules of Love, and I've just about to finish it.
I love him.
I love him, right? Obsessed. Like, need to find a man like him. I'm not dating anything less. Oh,
we need helpful advice.
Can we get Jay Shetty, please?
Chae Shetty? Can we get Jay Shetty?
Can we get the Chae version of Jay? Anyway, so love is an action. Love, and people say it's a feeling, and you just know it. But I'm like, nah, like there's so much to it. Like I feel like for me, I just don't want to waste time. Obviously, you've said that. I don't want to waste time. And I get to know people early, and I do have like, a sort of immediate traction with people who I feel like, I connect with because for me it's about connection. But this definitely fucking rattled me and threw me so much throughout this week.
And where did he say it and how did he say it?
I feel like I pushed it in some way because I was asking questions. So he invited me to a wedding, and then I was like, oh, like, are you part of the groom's party? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go to a wedding where I have to sit separately to you. Like, it's huge that you invited me to a wedding in the first place after fucking 3 weeks.
On a table with everyone that I don't know.
And then he was like, no, my family will be there. And I was like, wow, shit. So I'm meeting the family too. And then I was like kind of spun out, and I was like, wait, you must really like me if you want me to meet your family. He's like, Brooke, I more than like you. I love you. And I was like, holy shit.
Girl.
And I just hugged him.
Bless his soul. Bless his soul. You know what? I think he thinks he does love you, and I don't think he's lying. What I think he thinks in his head is, oh my God, I found this incredible girl. She's been so open. She's given me her heart because, like, I've been, so, like, in her space and, around her and feeling that connection. But I think that he just jumped the gun. Like, I feel like he should have just sort of, I don't know, dug a bit deeper and not said that.
I as well. I'm a very deep person. That is, for me, very surface level. Saying that is very amateur, and I think it's like really, and I had the conversation with him. We've taken a step back because I told him, and I talk very openly about this year is about dating but staying single. Like, I just want to like meet people.
Yes,
and I don't want
that.
to have a commitment to anyone and be accountable for anyone other than myself and my 3-year-old cavoodle.
And you know what? When you love someone that deep, like, what I will say is that my ex, right, our love grew. Like, in the beginning, it was something that evolved. Like, we fell in love in, like, I felt like it was like a moment, but then our love grew. And I feel like when you love someone and truly love someone, it's like undeniable. It is like, there's no question in your mind. And even though we're not together, like, I know that I love him, But I think that like the real true love is like something that you will wait on, something that you won't force, and something that you will like truly consider.
Yeah, I think saying I love you, first of all, you have to define love before you think it, feel it, and say it. I truly believe that I feel like obviously love in ways is so undefined. I wrote that about, I wrote about that in Big Love. Like my mum was severely abusive, but I knew there was love there and she loved her kids.
Yep.
So that's, that's my lived experience, and that's a different experience that most people will have.
Yes.
But that's also relationships, and that's why this book that Jay Shetty wrote about 8 Rules of Love defines a lot about how you see relationships and how you define those relationships and I think for me, love bombing someone it's not fair on the person that you're saying it to if they're both not there. I think there should be the right intention, obviously, but there's also, you should feel that it's the right reciprocation.
Yeah.
Like, is that right?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like that? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But also, like, something like love bombing, do you find that it gives you the ick, and that if you feel that you can quickly be like, your whole mind can change about someone?
I absolutely love love. And if someone has been that vulnerable to say it, obviously I'm going to respect and accept that that's where they're at. But if I'm not at it, it does make me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It has given me the ick. But in actually other ways, when someone has said I love you, I've ended up in 3 relationships.
Right.
So one was one of my very first like long-term boyfriends, which was this guy who I dated for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he said I love you after 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then it was another long-term relationship, which was post-bachelor, and he said I love you after 5 days.
Oh.
And we ended up together for 14 months. So there is that intense chemistry and that intense like feeling, and then if it's reciprocated, you
can I ask a personal question?
Yes.
So are these moments like at the climax of sex? Because that's where it seems like the irrational thought has come into the mind, and it's like, I love you.
Or it's like post-nut clarity, but it's more than that.
I don't know. Like, I feel like did they all happen at the same time? No, I'm sure it didn't.
The first time, yes, but the second time it was like my person was like leaving to go out, and they had said it like to go, and they were like, bye, love you, and then we both were like, what?
Oh, I remembered when I got the ick from someone saying the word love.
Yes, go.
So 2 things, right? So
Icky.
Icky. Okay, I haven't got the ick much from people, but there was one guy who said to me, he said, you just need to be loved, don't you? And I was like, I looked up at him and I was like, in my head, I was like, really, bitch? And you think you're the one to do it? No. Like, no. And, oh, my God. Do you remember how I told you about the guy that I was seeing who pretended that I was the football player in season 1? Remember?
Yes.
The AFL player. Guess who I ran into? I ran into him at the Calvin Klein party.
You're kidding.
After all these years, 6 years later, and he comes up. I see him. I'm like avoiding him. He comes up and he's like, hey, how are you? After all these years, he's like come back from the States. And like, it was this moment where I was like, oh, I used to find you like so hot, really attractive. And there's something about him that gave me the ick in the moment. You know what the fucking funniest thing was? He said to me, he goes, weren't you like a school teacher or something? And then I felt like saying to him, oh no, remember I was an AFL player. He's like, you're on TV now, aren't you? He's like, I'm like, how did that happen? Like, weren't you like a school teacher? And now you're on TV. I'm like,
I would have been like, footy career's going really well. Won a Brownlow if you wanted to ask.
Dalium Award, babe.
All right, well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for listening to Not So PG. If you love us, leave a 5-star rating and a little review.
And if you want to tell us something, follow us on socials and slide into our DMs. My handle is at It's Matty Mills.
And my handle is Brooke.Blurton. And you can follow all the Nova Podcast action over at Nova Podcast Official.
Happy Mardi Gras. Happy Sydney World Pride. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Gay Christmas.